Good evening, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. So, I would like to thank everybody who has tipped me on PayPal. I really appreciate it, and I put some of that money to good use. A friend of mine had a computer. He actually has computer services here in the Astoria area. He's called Atech Astoria. So, if you have any computer needs that you need done anywhere, like even in the Portland area, he'll travel and he'll set up your computers. He'll set up Wi-Fi. He'll hook you up with everything you need as far as anything that has to do with computers or technology in such fashion. Great guy. His name's Mark, and I'll leave a link down in the description for him. And he had a computer that he has just refurbished. He has some software on it, some new software, and he hooked it up for my kids. And he was like, "Hey, man, I got this computer. I built this for your kids." And he's been a little slow on work, and I know that he was saying that he was going to have a little bit of trouble making rent. And so I was like, hey, man, my fans, they're really appreciative of all the videos that I've put out, and they've tipped me on PayPal, and I would like to buy this computer from you. And at first he was a little reluctant. I was like, man, I want to do this for you. So I've used some of that PayPal money to purchase that computer, and I really appreciate it because that computer is going to help my kids out while they're out of school with their education, to help continue that on, because right now all the schools in Oregon are shut down, and without basically going to school and not having the schoolwork, they're not doing anything as far as their educational purposes go. So that computer is really going to help them out as far as continuing on with their reading and math and history lessons and stuff like that. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much, Mark, for hooking me up with the computer, and thank you guys, everybody who has tipped me on PayPal. I really appreciate it because it gave me that opportunity to buy that computer from them. So you guys are awesome for that. Thought I would talk a little bit more about the restaurant industry. The restaurant industry is huge here in the United States and employs a lot of people. All the waitresses, waiters, cooks, dishwashers, owners, management. Everybody who participates in a restaurant is a vast amount of employees here in the United States. But it's not just the restaurants. It goes deeper than that, because the people who supply the restaurants with everything they need is a whole industry separate from the retail end. So even though you have like cheese makers, bread makers, all that other stuff that goes along with the industry, the people who produce that stuff for the restaurants don't really produce it for retail end like grocery stores. So when these restaurants started shutting down, they're hacking out a huge chunk of the food industry that has to deal with restaurant services. And a big example of that is in dairy. See, right now you go down to the grocery store and dairy is like one of the hot commodities down there. You go and look at the cheese, it's like, at least in my area, the cheese is depleted, the milk is like all but gone. A lot of the dairy products are just like being purchased up like crazy because everybody's at home and they're eating at home, and dairy is one of those very popular products. But over on the restaurant side of supply things, dairy is in a very critical state. Dairy farmers are being told to dump their milk, if you can believe that. Now, I know a lot of people say, well, why don't they just ship it over to the people who are supplying it for the stores? But it doesn't work like that. See, the supply chain is geared to go one direction, and it isn't a matter of just shifting over. So these producers of milk, right, the dairy farmers who send it off to the factories who produce the cheese and the whatever products for the restaurants, those factories, they can't just switch over to start providing for retail. You have to get new machinery, new packaging, new labels. Everything that goes along with what their industry was providing has to be completely re-geared. So it's not just a matter of like, hey, we can just switch direction with this stuff. You have to completely rebuild your factory. You completely rebuild the whole process of everything. And so these dairy farmers, they have no place to go with this milk. And it's not like the dairy farmers can just say, hey, we're going to go on vacation for a couple of months and just say, we'll come back here and fire things back up again. No, those cows have to be milked. They have to be milked every single day. And if they produce this milk and they have no place to go with it, then they have to dump it. And now this is creating yet another problem on top of it, and an environmental issue. Because what it's going to start doing, or what it has started doing, is that this tons of milk that they're dumping every single day, the gallons and gallons, hundreds of thousands of gallons, is going to contaminate the groundwater. And if it starts contaminating the groundwater, now you got a whole other issue at hand, especially if it starts getting into the streams and starts killing fish. So there's an environmental issue that's taken place with the fact that these dairy farmers have to dump a lot of their milk, or if not all of it that they produce. Now, one of the other things that's coming from that is that in order to deal with this overproduction of milk or this dairy for the restaurant industry that's not being shipped out to the restaurants, is that the way they're going to plan on solving this, a lot of them, is by culling off their herd. And you know what culling off means? It means killing the cows. So once you start doing that, once things do come back and restaurants do start opening up for the public again, you're going to start having an issue with the fact that there is no cows out there producing the milk. Because it's not like you're going to say, hey man, we need to, go get cows again and start doing this. No, you got to raise them up. And then it takes time to get them to start milking. So it's like a big process in order to keep these dairy cows going. And if you start killing them off, it doesn't come right back. So there's a huge problem that's taken place with the fact that these restaurants are being shut down right now, and it's affecting these dairy farmers. And and I'll leave links down in the description. And once you read this article, you're going to be pretty amazed, and you'll start thinking of other things that, can go along with this. Like I said, it's not like, these producers, a lot of people would just say, well, why don't they just send it off to the grocery stores? You can't do that. Like I said, it's new packaging, new everything that goes along with it. And it's not the way the supply chain goes. And so if you think about bakeries, if you think about people who do produce all the condiments and different things like that, all of a sudden these factories, they're done. They're shut down. And once they go out of business, it's going to be a very difficult task to get them to fire back up again. So anyway, I'm going to leave links down in the description for that. And I'm going to leave a link down in the description for Atech Astoria. So if you happen to be in the Portland area, you need some computer work done, contact Atech Astoria. Thank you very much for hooking me up with that computer. And thank you guys very, very much for all your tips on PayPal. I really appreciate that stuff. All right. Uneducated Economist. You guys let me know.